Hey guys, Scott here. Today I want to talk about DBD's toxicity overall. I've made a couple of videos about this, trying to figure out why people think the game is so toxic, because I've never really viewed it as that bad at all. And then I also made a tweet just earlier today where I asked, how is this different from any other PvP games community? Because I was talking to my stream about it, and everyone's like, yeah, DBD is, toxic community, blah, blah, blah. But then I just realized that every PvP game that exists has a toxic PvP scene. Every single one. I actually can't think of a single game that has ever existed that features PvP as its primary focus in which there wasn't toxicity back and forth. So the whole point I always have with defending it is that DBD is just like every other game. Unless you've never played another video game before, I'm not sure why you would think DBD is so much worse. But a couple of people, reading responses just to get more information about this, did bring up a fairly common point. And the common point is the whole asymmetry. And even I have talked about this in previous videos about toxicity, that the perceived imbalance from the other side creates this tribalism mentality, and it's an us versus them thing, which can make it appear to be more toxic than it actually is. And a lot of other games have a more symmetrical thing, so if you're playing Counter-Strike, it's a lot harder to complain about the other side because you're just using the same shit. You're just complaining about your own side at that point. So I really thought about it here, and honestly, I think one of the best ways to fix a majority of DBD's perceived toxicity, again, I don't really think it is that bad, but a lot of people do. So I think one of the best ways to fix its perceived toxicity is to address the core issue of not having sympathy for the other side. And how do we do that? We need to have people playing both sides more often. The thing I have noticed, and it's really nice to have like a conclusion about this, most of Dead by Daylight's toxicity as a blanket statement comes from people that only play one side. And I think that's pretty damn true. If you really think about it, a lot of it comes down to people not understanding and not sympathizing with the issues that the other side have to go against. So, for example, you'll have someone that, face camps in endgame with Bubba, and then the person that got face camped in endgame, against the Bubba is mad at that person, thinks the Bubba's toxic, he's face camping. But then if you play a few games of Killer and you're in that scenario, you come to the natural conclusion of, well, what the fuck else can I do? I have no other options. I have to do this. So that's what I mean. I think most of Dead by Daylight's perceived toxicity comes from the fact that people that only play one side bitch the loudest. And I think the only way to fix that on a global scale, like personally, you can just ignore those people because obviously people that only play one side, their opinions are irrelevant. Just ignore them. They're clowns. But for the actual majority, there's not an easy way. I can't just say, well, I'll just mute people that do that, because that doesn't help everything else. So in order to fix DBD's toxicity, we need to incentivize people to play both sides, even if they don't want to. Now, we can't punish people for not playing a side. That causes animosity. A lot of ASIM games have tried that before, where you can't even select your role, and people hate that shit. So you can't do that. You have to reward people for branching out and playing the role that they don't want to play. Even if you only get them to play one additional killer game a day when they're a survivor main, even that little bit over time, I truly think that would instill so much more empathy from the other side. And a lot of DBD's us versus them tribalism would go down significantly. So how do we do that? How do we actually make it so people that only play one side actually play the other side, even if it's only a little bit? I think the simplest way is incentives. You can do, for every 5 games or whatever value you want, you play of one side. When you go back to the main menu, then the other side you haven't played is highlighted in gold or whatever. And there is a massive bonus for playing it. Like, I don't know, like 5 times blood points in that game, or a bunch of bonus iridescent shards or something like that. Something tangible that makes it so even though they don't want to play that role, they will subject themselves to it to get the rewards from it, which will have the side effect of them continuing to play that role over and over and starting to go, oh, okay, I see why they do this now. Because if you only play one side, you'll never understand that. You'll just think the other side is toxic, and there's just no saving you at that point. So I think in a blanket statement, the way we fix DBD's perceived toxicity is by heavily incentivizing people to experiment with the other roles that they don't normally play, because most of the problems are caused by tribalism, and most of those people are people that only play one side, and they're the loudest about it. Like I said on Twitter, I actually don't really know of that many people that play in a toxic way that actually play both sides. It's almost always someone that's exclusively one side or the other. So if we can incentivize people to play both sides, even if it's uneven, I think over time that will lead to a natural reduction in DBD, having that kind of mentality behind it. Also, it might help queue times too, because if someone has to play an additional killer game when survivor queues might be slower, it might actually help the survivor queues a bit because there's a bit more killers than there would have been now. So that's my solution for it. I'm curious to hear if you guys have any opinions on that. I think that's the best and simplest way to do it. But that's it. Thanks for watching.